Good evening, Jimmy here in Chicago. Hope everybody's enjoying their week. Today we're going to do a story about a Chicago outfit boss, the boss of Chicago Heights. That's in the far south side of Chicago, a very seedy, shady area till this day. But back then, it was filled with brothels, gambling joints, bars, strip clubs, any vice, any illegal activity. You go to Chicago Heights. Later on, I'll do a story about the Chicago Heights crew, but today we're going to talk about Al Palato. He was boss of the Chicago Heights crew, and somebody even tried to kill this man. It was a botched hit, an assassination on a Chicago outfit boss. So stay tuned. We're going to dive into that in a moment. And as I said before, for anybody looking for a job, or maybe you want to change your career, check out these guys, Career Empower. They'll help you change your life, help you make more money. Check them out. If you're looking for a job, whether it's sales, engineering, IT, whatever it is, these guys will take good care of you. As I said before, I'm in the very early stages of going into the studio and doing a podcast with one of the last Mohicans, a legend in my mind, my good friend Rico Panone. This man here is going to share with you some stories that we've never heard before. His resume is platinum. We're going to talk about being the United States martial arts champion, all the people he's trained. We're going to talk about his restaurant, Rico, right there in the Taylor Street neighborhood where all the big shots used to hang out, VIPs. We're going to talk about his experience working for John DeArco Sr. in the very powerful First Ward. Rico's going to tell you what he thinks about that government informant, Bob Cooley. He might share with you some stories about Harry Elliman, his security company, where he provided security for Led Zeppelin, Aerosmith, and all the rock bands back in the 1980s. So stay tuned for that. You guys are going to love it. We're taking it slow but steady. Now let's get into it. We're going to talk about this guy. This guy goes back, almost back to the Al Capone days, right? You got Al Palato, boss of the Chicago Heights crew, made member of the Chicago outfit, pretty much a career criminal, killer. I think he was 70 years old when they tried to kill him. Now, number two in charge of the Chicago Heights crew is this guy here, El Taco. In my opinion, maybe El Taco wanted to be the boss of the Chicago Heights crew. Maybe there's a little bit of a power struggle. I got to remember, this was during the Chop Shop Wars. A lot of people were getting killed. There's a lot of uncertainty, especially in that crew. El Taco, sidetrack on him, made member of the Chicago outfit. He took part in a making ceremony, according to Nicky Calabrese. According to Nick Calabrese's testimony, El Taco participated not only in the botched burial of the Spilotro brothers, but he was one of the men present that brutally beat Tony and Michael Spilotro to death. I've heard from certain individuals that El Taco was a very handsome man, and he ran one hell of a whorehouse. He lammed it, took off to Greece. On his way back, they pinched him at O'Hare. I think he ended up dying in prison. But if he were alive, he would have been one of the men sitting at the defense table along with the other co-defendants at the family secrets trial. And I'll never forget when his nasty wife got on the stand and testified against her own husband. Now, I'm sure he wasn't an easy man to live with, but she led a good life with this man. The house, the car, the vacations, the shopping, the jewelry. And what does she do? She rats him out. She told the government that he called her late at night, yelling and screaming and swearing, demanding that she pick him up somewhere in Indiana. When she finally found him, he was out of breath. He was livid. According to her, he told her that he participated in the burial of those bodies, which I don't believe. She said he was full of dirt and had on work clothes. She testified she never seen her in work clothes. Another lie. But Al Taco was one of the bosses of the Chicago Heights crew. Pretty much Al Palato's right-hand man. Now, getting back to Al Palato, I'm not sure what his nickname was, but here he is sitting down at the famous Last Supper photo. Now, you had to be pretty high up there in the Chicago outfit to sit with these men, right? You got boss of the Chicago outfit at the time, Joey Aiuppa. Then you had a very ailing, sick Dominic DeBella. Joey said this was a going-away party for him, meaning he was passing away eventually. Then you had boss of the Gold Coast Rush Street. You had Vince Salerno. And then here's Al Palato in the white shirt with a big smile on his face. Behind him standing, Jack Cerrone. Then you had Joe Lombardo. The fat guy, James Torello, who my father was in the Marine Corps with. Little Caesar DeVarco. Black Joe Amato. And then you got JB, Joe Batters. Joey denied knowing everybody and most of the men in the photo. But this is Al Palato, so he had to be up. He had to be well trusted in order to sit with these men. Al Palato was also I think he was the president of Local 5 Laborers Union. I mean, imagine the salary, the perks, the power, the influence you have with that kind of job. And a lot of Chicago outfit guys got those jobs. Not only them, but their family members, their friends, their associates, state jobs, IDOT, the corrupt Illinois tollway system, city jobs, right? You want to be a cop? You want to be a fireman? You want to work for the sewer department, the water department, streets and sands? You want to drive a truck? You want to work security at the United Center, Soldier Field, Wrigley, all city jobs. All you had to do is show up. Some of the guys in my neighborhood had no-show jobs. But Al Palato was a powerful union guy in the laborers. Now, Al Palato's brother or brother-in-law, was the chief of police of Chicago Heights. So how corrupt is that, right? You got the mob boss of Chicago Heights, and your very own brother is chief of police. Complete control of that corrupt town. If you guys got any Chicago Heights stories, feel free to share them. Now, Al Palato, we're going to get to the botched hit in a minute. I think his top enforcer, or one of his top enforcers, was this piece of shit here, Billy Dober. This is a Chicago outfit associate, kind of a wannabe, if you will, a career criminal and a killer. Him and his nasty bitch wife. That's one of the reasons they killed her too. She was no saint, kind of like a Bonnie and Clyde. This was all during the Chop Shop Wars. A lot of guys got killed. But Billy Dober was Al's top enforcer. Now, the men that killed Billy Dober and his wife, and I heard the evidence to prove this, assuming you agree, assuming you believe the government's witness, right? But you had Scarpelli, Butchie, two guys from the Wild Bunch crew, collaborating, working together with two guys from the 26th Street crew, Frankie Calabrese and Ronnie Jarrett. They provided a fancy, not fancy, but a high-speed, it was a Mustang, very fast car that they worked on in Ronnie Jarrett's mother-in-law's garage. Butchie and Scarpelli followed them in a van. When Dober and his wife were exiting, I think it was either a Will County courtroom, they were driven off the road by Ronnie Jarrett. Butch Petroselli pulled out a shotgun, started blasting Billy Dober and his wife. Then he pointed the shotgun at Scarpelli and ordered him out of the car. Scarpelli immediately got out of the car and shotgun blasted Dober and his wife again. I think he blasted them right in the head. But these are the four men here that took part in the Billy Dober hit. And that's Al Palato's top enforcer. So Al Palato was probably maybe getting a little nervous. Fast forward, there was an indictment, right? I think it was in Miami. And let me check here. Al Palato, Tony Arcardo, and 13 other men were indicted on charges of defrauding the health and benefits funds of the labor's union. That's just one scam they had going. They also pinched them for racketeering, conspiracy, and other charges. So that could have been a motive, a reason, right? Maybe Tony Arcardo felt Arcardo was trying to keep him from turning state's evidence. But I don't know about that because he already did time in prison, right? He stood up. He's 70 years old. I'm not so sure he would flip. But these guys don't take any chances, right? Now, Arcardo was acquitted. Al Palato got 20 years. He served 10 years. I think he was paroled in 1992. You could fact check that if you guys want. So after doing, he got sentenced to 20 years, never ratted, never rolled, gets out in 10, comes home. He's golfing. I think it was Crete, Illinois. And early in the morning, he was golfing with a couple of his buddies, Sammy Guzzino, his brother Richie, another guy, Bobby. I'm not going to mention his last name. Those three guys, there's one of them right here. Now look at this Mama Luke. This guy's got to be 450 pounds. If you're casting for Chicago mob guy, this is your guy right here. So a guy lying in wait came out from a tree, fired a couple shots at Al Palato. I think one shot hit him in the left arm. Second shot got him in the shoulder. They took him to the local St. James Hospital right there in Chicago Heights. He was actually in fair condition. He survived the hit. They had him under 24-hour security guard. They interviewed the Crete police chief and said that was probably a mob hit. That's what he suspected. And the only thing that saved Palato that day from being killed was pure luck. You would think if they really wanted to take out a boss of a crew, they would have given that to the maybe the 26th Street crew. Men that would have carried out that hit, no problem. So here's a botched hit on a boss of Chicago Heights crew, Al Palato. Somehow he survives. Tells the cops he doesn't know who shot him. He probably didn't know who shot him. But he never ratted. He never snitched on anybody. And then again, you got the Guzino brothers who were golfing with him, probably set him up. And then these two Mamalukes gave the contract of killing a Chicago Heights boss to a fucking cab driver. Are you kidding me? How unprofessional is that? The cab driver, the gunman, Daniel Bounds, he was the actual triggerman who shot him in the shoulder. He eventually flips. He doesn't want to go down for this. He testified, left town. And then you got Richard Guzino, Robert, his brothers, and then Sammy Guzino. They were all convicted because not only did they set it up, but they trained and armed Daniel Bounds to murder Palato. They trained the shooter. But unbelievable. Why would you hire a criminal cab driver to pull off such a big hit like that? There's a good photo here of a younger Al Palato while Chicago Heights crew. Now, during this time, before they solved this crime, Sam Carlisi, boss of Chicago outfit, wanted answers. And I talked about this in one of my prior stories you guys could check out. Nick Calabrese testified that Sam Carlisi, Nick Ferriola, Jimmy Marcello, and a couple other guys got a hold of this guy, DeAndrea, and they wanted to ask him questions about the botched assassination of Al Palato. And when Nick Calabrese and Jimmy Marcello were locked up in Milan, Michigan, they were talking about that murder in code, and they were saying how strong this guy was, how they had a hell of a time, cuffing him, getting him down. But once they got him in the car, Sam Carlisi, he kept cracking him in the head with the butt of a shotgun. Carlisi got carried away. He lost his temper. Now, this is according to Nick Calabrese. Carlisi lost his temper, cracked him one too many times, and actually killed Nicholas DeAndrea. He never talked. He never confessed anything. When Carlisi told him to go check on him, Nick Calabrese testified that when he went back to the car, he was dead. Now, during this testimony, his son, Bob DeAndrea, was in court, sitting maybe 10 feet away from me. This guy looks like an NFL football player, ripped, built. This guy's in great shape. The fucking veins were bulging out of his neck. He was glaring at Jimmy Marcello and glaring at Nick Calabrese. I thought for sure he was going to jump over and attack the witness on the stand, meaning that coward rat Nick Calabrese. I don't know how he controlled himself. But this is a good man here. And I forgot to mention, the day Nicholas DeAndrea, again, he was no slouch. He was, I don't think he was a made guy, but he was an associate of the Chicago outfit. Made a lot of money, an enforcer, a gambler, ran juice, probably worked, reported right to El Taco, El Palato. His wife testified that the day he disappeared, he got a call. He got real upset when he hung up the phone. He appeared to be real nervous. He grabbed his gun, put it in his waist, kissed his wife goodbye, got in his silver Mercedes, and showed up like a man. When you're called, when you're whistled in, he showed up, and they killed him. He was one of the 18 murders that Nick Calabrese testified to. Here's another guy, a botched attempt. Not too many people survive a Chicago outfit hit. This isn't like New York, Boston or Philly, where these guys are all flying high on cocaine, running around like cowboys. When Arcardo, Ferriola, Carlisi gave an order, I'd say 95% of that time it was carried out. Canito, as we all know, the two Mamelukes that shot him used weak ammunition. Both of them ended up in the trunk of the car. But Canito survived the botched hit. Another guy, I'm not so sure if he would have flipped either. And then you got Lefty, right? Lefty. Everyone thought that the Chicago outfit or Tony Spilotro had Lefty killed, especially because he was an informant. But it was really the Kansas City mob. Once they found out he was a rat, I'm sure with the approval of the outfit, he survived a car explosion. That's a real photo there. But that's it. Al Palato, right? Boss of Chicago outfit. I'm sorry, boss of Chicago Heights crew. Sat down, say with the commission, some of the most powerful, most dangerous men in the country. Had guys like Al Taco, Billy Dober, and many, many other men we'll talk about in another story about the Chicago Heights crew. Does time in prison like a man. Comes home. Some people think Tony Arcardo ordered the hit. Some people think it might have been a power struggle within the crew. That's very possible. Now I'm working on a rat of the month, right? Every month I'm going to do one. So we're going to do one in October. I'm going to be going out of town, but when I get back, maybe mid-October, towards the end of October, I'm going to do a story. I've been waiting to destroy this guy for a long time. I've had several requests. And I touched on him in prior videos, but this lowlife here, government informant, lowlife snitch, I like to call him VD. Y'all know what VD is, right? But his name is Vincent Dublino. He testified against Mike Sarno, Mark Polchin, and the entire crew, sending them men to decades in prison. Now this scumbag is living like a king. You would not believe how this guy has benefited by his rat moves. So we're going to talk about him. My rat of the month. I mean, look at him. Doesn't he look like a rat? Take care, guys. Have a good week. Again, Rico, we're going into the studio. You guys are going to hear some epic stories. If you like my Chicago stories, hit the like button, subscribe, share with your friends. If you don't like them, if you're haters out there, put down the fucking drink. Put out the cigarette, grab that old lady, and go take her to the Olive Garden. Will you? Take her to bingo. Ciao.